because I was married to a Denise.
Mr. McConnell, may I ask you one question, please? I'm just so curious with all of this coming out, the truth and everything. Is Mr. Margaritaville good or bad?
Bad.
Aw, he fooled me.
Tracy, are you recording this?
I sure am, Paula.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Do you want to elaborate on Margaritaville at all, Field?
What was that question, Paula?
Do you want to elaborate any more on Margaritaville?
Yeah, I've seen no reason to trust him. He was disrespectful to my wife. He lied to me, and I think you think I'm pretty easygoing, don't you, Paula?
You certainly are.
Yeah, and Tracy, wouldn't you agree that I'm pretty easygoing?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, if either Paula or Tracy ever lied to me and I figured it out, then I'd be done with them. And, it's not that, God forgives us, and God only forgives us if we acknowledge our transgressions and we try to turn away from sin. But, if somebody like Tracy or Paula, who I trust very much, and let me just elaborate on how it's manifested that I trust them. Tracy and Paula are the two other principals of ALGN Radio. And so I think that's a responsibility. And it's a responsibility that involves representing ALGN Radio and the other people associated with it. In this case, myself, Tracy, and Paula. But yeah, so if somebody wants to trust Margaritaville, then they can certainly do that. We all are given powers of discretion. But the question posed to me was, do I trust Margaritaville? And if you go back on the recording and listen to how quickly I answered the question, you should probably read something into that. Okay, enough about that. What's next?
Does anybody have any questions for Field?
I would like to say hello, Mr. Field. This is Jenny. And I just want to say, wow, what a blessing it's been to be able to hear your story through Tracy and Paula. And I just want to let you know, I look forward to hearing more of what you've got to share. And we all love you so much. And we're very blessed to have you a part of us, and Tracy and Paula as well. So I just want to say thank you so much for your service and everything you do. And God is really amazing that He got you through your tough time there. And, here's to a speedy recovery, continued speedy recovery. We love you.
Well, thank you, Jenny. You've really touched my heart because I don't really think I've done much of anything, but God gave me some challenges, and God didn't desert me. So when we came to the river, He guided me across the river to the other side and put my feet on dry land. And so any credit that somebody might mistakenly assign to me, I would ask those people to please attribute the glory and the honor to God, because without God in my life, I would have been gone 2 years ago.
Yeah. And Field, I just want to let you know, Jenny's the lady that's been working very closely with Tracy and I, and she is the one that's going to interview you on her show.
Why don't we let's tell Jenny right now that anytime she wants to interview me, I'm available.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. So and you know what, Field, we know you're a blessing from God above. We could not say that any better. And we are all so thankful for you, and we all stand by your side. I know I've said, tell Field, sending my love and prayers through Tracy and through Paula, and we stand by you. Whatever, we are your warriors, and we are so blessed to have had Tracy be your voice through these challenging times. And I'm gonna cry. But I just want to say thank you, and you're a blessing from God above. And I mean, who would have thought that we would all be apart some way at a distance in your life, right? But all of us here are so grateful for what we have with you and these two ladies. And I want to say thank you, and we know you are absolutely a blessing from the Lord above. And I just don't think we have the words to say thank you. So, but thank you, and we love you.
Well, I would just ask you a favor. If you could coordinate the timing of the interview that you'd like me to participate in with either Tracy or Paula or both of them, that would either double or triple the odds that I'd be made aware of it, because I unfortunately stay busy or sleep much of the day. And when I say I sleep much of the day, it's because I'm recovering from a health issue. And today is Friday, I think. And it was last Friday that I was told by the doctor that is now my primary physician that my recovery is moving along so quickly, he doesn't need to see me until October.
Well, like I told Paul and Tracy, you have a spot on my podcast anytime you want. And I apologize for getting emotional, but this is just amazing. And my podcast, basically what my podcast is, we're a voice for the voiceless. So, as Tracy's been kind of the voice for you to tell your story as you've, gone through, you can only talk about certain things. My podcast would be more about you. I'll ask you some questions, and you come on and you talk about you and your journey, and let everybody know about the field that they may not truly know, or that maybe they've not ever heard of you, but you've got such a story to tell. It would definitely not be in one podcast. So I told them that you have a spot on my show anytime you're available. You can come on anytime, and I absolutely invite that 100%.
Well, let me ask you this and put the ball back in your court, Jenny. What day and time of the week are you most open, or is your audience most available? Do you have an idea?
For you, Phil, they're going to be open anytime. So I am booking now my podcasts in July. So I'm typically doing them on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So anytime really right now through July is pretty open. I've got a couple at the beginning of the month, but anytime you want to come on, you got a spot. We'll make it work. No worries.
Okay, let's put the ball in Paula's court, because Tracy and I have no schedule.
Okay.
But Paula does have a schedule. But Paula, what's a good day for you in July?
All days are good now, Field. Yesterday was, I finished my contract yesterday. So now I'm working from home. So all days are wide open.
Okay, so let me look here. I'm looking at my calendar here for you guys real quick. July. So you guys want to do the second week of July, just because we have the 4th of July on a Tuesday. And then do you guys want to do either the 10th, 12th, or the 14th? So that's a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday.
Whichever day is good for you guys. I'm open for all three.
So let's do the 10th. Let's do it on a Monday. Let's sooner the better, right? Let's get him on here. Yay.
Let's do it.
And what's a good time for you guys and Paula during the day, since Tracy and Phil don't have a schedule?
Hang on a sec. Tracy, when are you in Plum City? When are you in Plum City?
The 13th. The 13th.
Why don't we go the 14th then? That way Tracy's with him.
Okay. Yeah, that would be awesome.
What do you think, Field?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Jenny, you don't know me, But pardon my voice, it's breaking because
Oh, don't.
so many people give me credit for stuff, and I'm not deserving of the credit. But Tracy and Paula have been the most loyal associates I've come in contact with. And just to be balanced, so often people come into my world and they're trying to, you know, they're trying to grab some of whatever it is I have. And I'm not going to mention the name Timothy Holmseth. I hope. I hope I don't mention that. But you know, I've heard from many people that the reason he ingratiated himself into my life was he was trying to steal my audience. Well, first of all, I do not have an audience. I don't even have a radio show yet, but I do have people that are aware of my history, and for whatever reason, some of them, elect to honor my history, and others endeavor to try to take some of my history away from me. And, you know, negativity never works. And if you want me to show you how flexible I am mentally right now, in the movie Kelly's Heroes, I think that's what it was called, Donald Sutherland plays a whacked out tank driver, and he talks about enough negativity. And I would encourage all your listeners, if they want to just laugh at something I'm not saying but was said 45 years ago, Donald Sutherland and negativity, if anybody were to put those two words into YouTube, the funny exchanges between Donald Sutherland as the tank driver, who he acts like he's on drugs, which maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, who knows? I don't know anything about drugs. And people sometimes correct me and say, well, I don't know how you can say you don't know anything about drugs, Field. And I said, well, I do, because I've been me for 73 years and I've never seen a drug. And then some of my critics say, do you know that alcohol is a drug? And I said, well, I don't have an opinion on that, but if it's true, then I guess I do know something about drugs. But the drugs haven't, to this point in my life, they have not caused me to have problems. That doesn't mean I'm going to get through this day without a problem. I may have a problem this afternoon. But as of right now, it's smooth sailing. And when I say that, my heart breaks to think about those 5 people who perished in the implosion of that submersible. And, you know, I think there's a lesson there for all of us. If you want to be adventuresome, then do something you understand and think you can control. But of those 5 people that perished on the submersible, 3 of them were billionaires. And my question to any of those 3 would be, what good is your money now?
Yeah.
Amen.
So, well, I value certain things, and I value Paula, I value Tracy, and I value what I'm hearing from Jenny about her thinking that her audience will enjoy hearing me tell the truth. And when I talk, I do tell the truth, and I don't try to create a name or history for myself. In fact, maybe if people want to get a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper, I'll just tell you 6 things I've been involved in that I believe nobody else on earth can say that they've been involved in with the same immersion level I have. first and foremost, my key subject is the truth of the flying events of 9/11, and I've filed federal lawsuits about how 9/11 was mischaracterized by claiming that Muslims or any other body of people did that to harm America. No, here's the part that other people can't claim. My own sister participated in the planning of 9/11. And how did she do that? Well, she did that because in December of 1988, she called me one night when I was involved with a friend of mine named Jack Daniels, and she asked me, what she could do to move passengers. Let me back up and say she was working in Washington, D.C., and she was in charge of the U.S. Marshal Service. She said, what could she do to make it safer to transport prisoners from the island of Oahu in Hawaii to the mainland of the western United States? And I said, well, you don't have to worry about that because I work for Northwest Airlines and we haul your prisoners, we haul your dependents every day of the week. And my sister said, yeah, but the airlines aren't going to allow us to use the airlines for hauling our prisoners because we have to have them shackled and handcuffed, and that delays the evacuation of an airliner. So that's one thing that I'm involved in at a level that nobody else on earth can equal, I don't believe. Okay, the next thing is, and this is off the top of my head, I don't have a list written down in front of me, even though I'm hoping some of you people do have a list. And number 2 on the list would be the exposure of the BUAP, the Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot. That was the mechanism that allowed the attack of 9/11 to almost succeed. And when I say almost succeed, there's people who probably think I'm nuts because they think it looks like it was successful. Well, it was not successful because there were 4 airplanes that were targeting 4 buildings and only 3 of them hit those buildings. The 4th airplane was United 93, and it departed, I'm trying to get this absolutely correct since people are taking notes. It departed Liberty International Airport in Newark, New Jersey, 41 minutes late. Okay, what's the significance of 41 minutes? That's a breadcrumb that somebody left so that people like myself or maybe Jenny or Paula or Tracy could be focused on who president number 41 was. And while people scratch their heads and other parts of their bodies, George H.W. Bush was president number 41. And President George H.W. Bush worked closely with my sister, Christine Marcy, in preparing and planning the attack of 9/11. And in doing so, they guaranteed its failure because there had to be somebody that would detect what was going on. And that somebody, if they were either a Christian or a patriot or both, would do what they could do to block the attack or delay the attack, because if you couldn't block it, at least delay it, because then that causes them, meaning the perpetrators, to change their game plan, and then a bunch of chaos ensues. And that's what happened on 9/11. Okay, so far we got, my involvement in 9/11 and the Boeing Uninterruptible Autopilot. Number 3 on the, go ahead, did somebody want to speak?
I'm just going to cough for 1 second, okay? Excuse me. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah. The third thing is when MH370 allegedly went down in the Indian Ocean on the 8th of July of 2014, on that same day, which because of the international dateline, it would have been July 9th by the time I reported it. But I, in coordination with a fellow who lives in Phoenix, Arizona, we put out a YouTube on July 8th of 2014 that explained that the aircraft MH370 did not go into the ocean, that it landed safely at Diego Garcia, which is a super sensitive, almost secret level military establishment in just south of the Maldives. And the Maldives are an island group south of Africa. And I try to use as much precise detail as I can when I'm reporting stuff, because it really sort of puts pressure on the tire kickers to try to amend my message. The aircraft MH370 landed at Diego Garcia and taxied into a hangar, which was basically a temporary hangar that had the ability to reflect and protect the MH370 or any other aircraft from surveillance from satellites or aircraft. And in this case, MH370 taxied into the hangar and it shut its engines down. And I said it shut its engines down because the crew was incapacitated, actually dead. And so they couldn't shut their own engines off, but it was done remotely. And that occurred at 6:11 a.m. off the top of my head on the 9th of July of 2014. Okay, so that's three things that I'm associated with. The fourth thing is I predicted in writing on the 29th of March of 2014, I predicted that by 1900 local, which is 7 p.m. local time, a second Boeing 777 would suffer an explosive event. And that, now keep in mind, I published that in writing on the 29th of March of 2014. And on the 17th of July of 2014, MH17 suffered a fatal incident over Donetsk, Ukraine, where it was exploded, but the people that exploded it did not have enough firepower in their detonation devices to completely destroy it. And therefore, a lot of the mass of the aircraft and a lot of the cadavers, and let me say that again, a lot of the cadavers in the aircraft fell to the ground and were intact. And why did I say cadavers? Well, because 239 of the 293 people, roughly, were victims of MH370 who'd been in storage at Diego Garcia since the incident with MH370. And the other minority of people that were killed were roughly 40 European Caucasians that they were all devoid of blood. And so we have two distinct populations. We have the survivors, or no, not the survivors, the cadavers. We have the cadavers of MH370, roughly 239, and they were partially decomposed. How do we know that? Because a Ukrainian woman did a YouTube. She went out with a video camera and she walked out in the debris field and she videotaped the cadavers. And she said she didn't understand why some of them were black, meaning decomposed, not ethnic blacks, but they were partially decomposed, so they were turning black, and the others were white. Well, the white ones were all devoid of blood. Now, most of the people listening to this broadcast have traveled on airliners, and I defy anyone to prove to me that there's ever been a person with no blood board an airliner. It's impossible. So, who were the 40 or so bloodless Caucasian cadavers? And they were experts on HIV and AIDS, and they wanted to endeavor to educate the world's population on what HIV was caused by, who caused it, and how are they going to remedy it. At this point, I'd like to inject something unusual. There is a song that Johnny Rivers did in 1967, and you can write this down and look it up later, and it's called Sweet Smiling Children. And in that song, there's a broadcast playing in the background, and the news reporter says, we would not create a disease unless we had some medicine that we could sell you. I think that's a very, very telling comment about what the future holds for not only America and the Western world, but for everybody. They, the bad people, the cabal, the deep state in America, they will create diseases only if they can make money out of selling people a supposed remedy. And we've seen that recently now with the pandemic. There's stuff that would have cured COVID, but the United States government and the World Health Organization and the globalists prevented certain items being sold and universally used to slow down the supposed proliferation of COVID, which did not exist. It was created. So let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know the sixth thing that I'm associated with quite closely is I believe that I was one of the first, if not the first person to suggest that the Senior Executive Service of the United States government was actually a treasonous enterprise. And for people, and there's probably most of your listeners, Jenny, have become familiar with the United States Senior Executive Service. But if any of your listeners are not familiar with it, that is a branch of the federal bureaucracy that actually perpetrates treason upon the United States of America. And it's become more difficult for them to do that since about 6 or 7 years ago, I broadcast on a radio show. I used to have a radio show called Able Danger, and I was fairly honest and blunt about reporting stuff that was true. And one of the things that I reported that made the bureaucracy and the federal government a little uncomfortable was I talked about how the United States Senior Executive Service should be called Treason Incorporated, because that's exactly why they were created. Who were they created by? Well, George H.W. Bush and my sister, Christine Marcy. That's who. And so anyway, there's 6 bullet points that sort of separate me from some of the people out there that they want to grab a headline or they want to be relevant. Well, I have 5 kids and 10 grandkids. And if any of my kids or grandkids said, how do I do something that will make me be recognized as relevant? And I said, well, you've answered your own question. If you do something that is in fact capable of being relevant, then it'll be done for you. But if you just want to be relevant by throwing darts at a wall, you're not going to hit the target very often. So anyway, enough of my pontificating. But Jenny, back to you. I think Paula had the right answer that maybe we should hope to broadcast. Maybe we should hope to broadcast on the 14th of July so that Tracy will be here in Plum City. And so it's just one more live person on the broadcast. Over to you, Jenny.
I think that's a great idea. I was actually just going to ask you, do you prefer to do a live chat with the audience, or do you prefer to do a recorded podcast? Because I do both.
Well, let me put the ball back in your court. Which do your listeners prefer?
Well, I can tell you they would love to hear you live. Either way, they would love to hear you because I know you've been very anticipated on coming out. So, either one is great. We can do it live like we're doing right now over on my channel. But let's do it live, because what I do is I do a live, I record it, then I upload it to my podcast hosts and my social media hosts, so that audience over there can get to hear it. So we'll do it live. We'll let the audience come in and listen to you, and maybe take some questions on the back end. We'll probably have a lot of people come in. So we'll have, what we do is we have them write questions on the back chat wall, and then we have one of my moderators read the questions, and then they're directed to you, and you can answer them however you feel you're able to. And then I'll just upload that recording over to my podcast host. So that way everybody can get to hear it, not just here in Telegram. Does that sound good? I'm excited.
Yeah, it sounds perfect. And I really like the idea of your listeners can pose questions, because I've been to a variety of conferences and spoken, and up to this point in my 73 years, nobody has ever seen me look at a teleprompter or look at notes, because that's not how I operate. If I don't know it, I don't speak about it. And if I do speak about it, I probably know it, but that doesn't mean that your listeners can't challenge me. I love to be challenged, and I love to be stimulated, because like right now, some of your listeners can think of questions they'd love to ask me, and I think they should be given the opportunity to ask those questions, because that proves a couple of things to the other listeners. It proves that we're not trying to shield ourselves from any questions or criticism, and it also proves that we have no agenda. And when I say I have no agenda, I'm not kidding. I have no agenda other than to be a faithful servant to Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior.
And we absolutely love that. And we so appreciate you. And I'm going to advertise the living you know what out of this, so people can be aware of it. And if they have any questions, you're going to feel the love. Let me tell you that, Field. You're going to feel the love. My chat room is very controlled. I don't open up all the mics unless, they're called on, kind of like in class. You raise your hand, we'll call on you, or we'll, if they write the questions on the back end. So we're not going to have interruptions. You're going to be able to speak as much as you want, as long as you want, and then we'll, I'll ask you, whenever you want to take some questions. It's your floor. My podcast is all about the guest and telling their stories, their journeys, because it's these types of stories and journeys that people have that have been so censored, so scared to say anything, that is going to form our new world. So I am absolutely honored that you will come on my show, and I know everybody is going to be super excited to know that you're going to come on. So how exciting is that? And then we're going to have Tracy on there as well. So it'll just make it that much more powerful and fun. I love it. Thank you so much, Phil. You're absolutely amazing, and you are very loved. Just know that.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Tracy, because Tracy joined this effort after Paula. But between Paula and Tracy, they've actually made my life easier, but because they can speak for me. And do they need to speak for me right now? No, but I was sick from October until about 3 weeks ago. And I didn't have the physical strength to stay on the phone as long as you and I have been on the phone right now, Jenny. And during that interlude, Paula, first and foremost, sort of took over communicating for me. And then Tracy joined in when Paula got busy with childcare. And so I can say that without Tracy and without Paula, there'd probably be no ALGN radio coming anytime soon. But because God got me over my illness and surprised the doctor, I'm not one who's ever had a personal physician, but at age 73, and with the health challenges I've had in the last 8 months, I decided, well, this might be the perfect time or the last chance to associate with a physician. And so I have a very good medical doctor at a Mayo Clinic campus in Menominee, Wisconsin, who takes a great interest in my health and my welfare. And even to the point of he cares more about my health and welfare than he or others probably thought I do or did. And one of the reason I phrase it that way is my zest for living, and I swallowed hard there, is I'm going to start crying. But my caring about living and wanting to go on was impacted when on December 30th of 2020, my wife, Denise Irene Clark McConnell, died at age 55. And after that occurred, I really wondered if I wanted to go on, or if I wondered if I had the stamina to go on alone. And I found out that whether I thought I would have the stamina or the willpower has nothing to do with it. God gave me the stamina and God gave me the willpower to persevere. And why does God want me to persevere? Well, I think, I can't speak for him. I speak of him all the time because I love him. But I think he knows that Denise is aware of what I'm doing, and Denise would wish for the show to go on. And that brings us back to you, Jenny. So you're accommodating my wife, Denise, because she's a big part of my story. And that sounds like a vague, random comment. I'm going to give everybody a chance to look at something on the internet. And what it is, it's a picture of an F-4 Phantom, which has a registration on the tail. In other words, on the tail of the aircraft. The aircraft was painted probably in 1966. And on the tail it says 40965. And that's the registration of the F-4 Phantom that was painted in 1966. Well, that's also Denise's birthday. And so God is involved in my life's journey. And I think, I'm quite certain that God knows that I give him all the credit, and I don't seek any credit. And the reason I don't is because I see other people in the truth movement that try to take credit for things they haven't done. And, I'm not going to be like them. I'm not going to take credit for putting Denise's birthday on that F4 tail, but I'm going to just give people what they need to find the picture. And so what they need to find the picture on the internet is to put in the search bar, whatever search engine you're using, try putting Field, F-I-E-L-D, McConnell's, that's the plural form of McConnell with an apostrophe S at the end, McConnell apostrophe S, Field McConnell's Jet, Jet, plus image. And then, in fact, Jenny, do you or your moderators have the ability to get that image and put it into your whatever it is you publish after the show?
Yeah, we'll put it on my wall. In fact, I think Tracy has put it on maybe both of our walls, if not her wall. So yeah, absolutely, we'll get that up on the wall for sure.
Well, pardon my weakness, but how does anybody explain to me how out of 5,200 F4 Phantoms that one of them would have my wife's birthday on it? It's an act of God, I think. And maybe there's people out there who have a different element of faith than I do, and they'd say, well, that's putting pressure on God. Well, I don't think you can put pressure on God. I think he's capable of doing anything he wants. But I find it remarkable that I didn't tell you that aircraft is on display in Canton, Texas, and it's the central display aircraft at that Van Zandt County Memorial in Canton, Texas. And so maybe sometime Jenny or Paula or Tracy or all of us can make a little trip down there to Dallas. Canton is 70 miles southeast of Dallas, but the aircraft with Denise's number on the tail it's a display, and it's the central attraction of everything, and I think that that's wonderful. Pardon my breaking voice, but I think it's wonderful because it keeps the memory of Denise alive, and it also demonstrates the willingness of God to be involved in worthy projects. Over to you, Jenny.
I agree with you 100%. This is a godly thing, and you can't make this stuff up. And Field, never apologize for your breaking voice. We love you so much, and we feel for you and the pain that you've gone through. And just know you have picked some amazing warriors with Paul and Tracy to be able to share your story and be that voice for you. Because, as we know, many of us have had to be the voice for the voiceless, and those two ladies have done an amazing job. And I'm super thrilled to be able to bring your actual voice to life and let people get to know the real Field. Because, a lot of people, like you always tell Tracy, a lot of people have opinions, right? So I love your spunkiness. I love your sense of humor. I love that you tell the truth, and you do. You'll banter with people if they want to challenge you. So I encourage that. And you're a hero is what you are in so many of our eyes. And we just absolutely love you. So thank you so much, and never apologize for your cracking voice, because mine cracked earlier. I did not expect that, but I couldn't stop the tears. So just know we love you.
Okay, well, thank you. I love you also. And I don't know how many people are in your organization right now today listening to this, but anybody that's spending time with Jenny and then ultimately with Paula and Tracy, if they're friends of those three ladies, they're friends of mine. And I will respect them and acknowledge them and never lie to them. Over to you.
So I want to not hog up the time, but I do want to see if anybody here has any questions for Field, because I will have my time with Field, and anytime he wants to come on my podcast, and Tracy and Paula as well. So anybody else here, this is, your time to shine and ask Mr. Fields any questions. We know we speak about him a lot in here, and here he is. So please ask your question, guys. Don't be afraid.
Thanks,
Hi,
Jenny.
Field. Oh, sorry. Hi, Field. This is Shannon. And I have a question for you. I thought somewhere I have read or heard on our chat that you were possibly born in Glendon, Minnesota. Is that where you were born?
No, I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, but I lived in Glendon, Minnesota from 1991, I think. No, 1992 until 2009. And by the way, I'm going to address your name, Shannon, and the town in Minnesota, Glendon. But Shannon is actually the name of a city in Ireland, and Glendon is not a name at all. It's a made-up word that a woman author back in the 1800s wanted to write a book. And back then, the misogynists and the sexists didn't really have any interest in reading books written by women. So when this woman wrote a book, I don't know what the name of the book was, but it doesn't matter. She used the name Glendon, Glindon, as her surname. So no, I was not born in Glendon, but I lived there a number of years. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I live in Dilworth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and I
if
heard
you
that
live in Dilworth, then you can answer a question for me. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Is the Hi-Ho still open?
Oh my gosh, it is. And it's actually up for sale right now because they have a Fargo location, but I had lunch there a couple weeks ago with my kids, and I graduated from Glendon, the high school in Glendon in 1996. And and I went to Concordia College. So, I'm sure we're familiar with that, but it's an honor to speak with you. And I thought I had read that, and what a coincidence that you had lived there. I mean, I live here at this time. And as far as my name goes, my maiden name is Mulliken. So I'm a pretty Irish. Irish, as my grandpa would say, is Patty's pig.
Well, I like all the Gaelic people, and some of your listeners, Jenny, may not know what Gaelic includes, but it includes England, Scotland, North Ireland, Wales, and if I'm leaving anything out, I just hope the Gaelic people will forgive me. But I think it's not a coincidence that you and I are having this conversation about the Hi-Ho and about Glendon. These things are not coincidences, but they are God winks, because God wants us to put out information that might capture the imagination of some of the listeners. So you've captured mine, and I find it interesting that you graduated from high school when I was living in Glendon. In fact, you might even know where I lived. Are you familiar with the farm I had southeast of Glendon?
I have very good friends that farm all around Glendon. What highway was your farm on, actually?
Well, if you take it, Highway 9 runs south from Highway 10, and about 2 miles south on 9, there's a 28th Avenue south, and if you go about 3/4 of a mile east on that avenue, there's a farm. It's 160 acres, and I'm glad that I don't know if I brought this up or you brought it up, Shannon, but I'm glad that it's been brought up, because I've I have a history of making the federal government a little bit nervous, and what they haven't learned is they should leave me alone, because God's in my corner and God loves me. And when I lost that 160-acre farm due to a fraudulent bankruptcy, I don't even remember the year, but it must have been around 2000. Wait a minute, no. I'll look it up and I'll report to Jenny. But it's a matter of public record. If you put Field McConnell in and Minnesota bankruptcy court, there should be a record of the bankruptcy wherein the federal government stole my property. And I'm not a vindictive, raving person that needs to be satisfied. I recognize that all these things that appear to be mean-spirited or negative, well, they're all tools that God uses to teach all of us people to be patient and have confidence in Him. There's nothing that God can't settle in our favor if we honor Him with our obedience and our trust. And so that's a tall order for a lot of us, me included. But I try to bless God because He's blessed me first. And anyway, that's just the way I am, and that's the way I will continue to be until I go home.
Well,
Is
thank
there
you for
anyone else? Go ahead, Shannon.
I just wanted to say thank you, and I think where your home was at is probably by the Leach Farms, which is my best friend's farms right out there. So I'm a realtor, so I think I probably know. I'm trying to figure out where it's at, but it's a pleasure speaking with you, and God bless.
Well, God bless you too, and thank you for invoking the name of God in this conversation. Have a good day, and I hope to meet you next time I'm up near Fargo. I have 3 kids. Out of my 5 kids, 3 of them live in the Fargo area.
Be my pleasure.
Is there anybody else that wants to ask Field a question?
Yeah, I think it was Patty next, and then I'll have Karen go next. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy. Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes,
me,
we
Field?
can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, thank you for your service and for bringing truth to us, which is so much needed right now. And you, and choosing these nice ladies of Paula and Tracy to help deliver some of these messages as well. The question I have for you is, I have a niece who's wanting to be she just graduated and is wanting to be a commercial pilot. Is there any of the part of the industry or a direction that you think right now is the safest airplanes for her to be in, or any information you can give me on that? Thank you very much.
Well, any information I would give you would be an opinion, and it would be a personal opinion, but I can tell you this, and it's 100% valid information. Flying is safer. I mean, right now, today, flying is safer than driving your car home from work. Why do I say that? Because the aircraft can fly themselves. That's what the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot brought to the world. And also, if you think about, we talked about alcohol being a drug. If you think about areas like Fargo, North Dakota, and Glendon, Minnesota, and Plum City, Wisconsin, on any Friday or Saturday night, about 1/3 of the headlights coming your way in the opposing lane are being utilized by an impaired driver. And so the obvious response to that would be, well, aren't there airline pilots who are impaired also? The answer to that should be no. But It's not. In fact, if you just do a Google search or any other search engine, I think it was Edinburgh, Scotland, on probably Sunday or Saturday of last weekend, a Delta pilot was arrested, and he was taken from the cockpit of a Delta flight that was about ready to leave for JFK Airport in New York. So the point being, yeah, it's possible that you might have an impaired pilot on an airliner, but it's unlikely that you're going to have 3 or 4 of them on the same crew. And I've been involved in the dynamics where I'm a crew member and we detect that one of our fellow crew members shouldn't be flying, and so we handle that internally. And of course that puts the fear of God in the person, because they think that they're going to get turned in. Well, turned into who? We just turned them into God. God knows what they've done, and if they turn to God, they can make sure that they don't transgress that way anymore. But no, I think flying is inherently safe. And how old is this niece of yours?
She just turned 18.
Oh, good. Then she's got plenty of time. Where does she live, roughly?
Alaska?
Oh, that's great. Alaska has its own airline, and it's a very, very good airline. But they're across the nation. In other words, if she got on with Alaska, which I would recommend that, and also I would recommend she tries to get on with Delta, because they're all over the place too. And right now, Delta is making a push to hire more females into the cockpits, which is, that's not exactly fair, but it favors females, and your niece is an alleged female. So I would recommend that she try to get on with Delta or Delta Connection, which means the commuters, or Alaska, or Alaska's commuter partners, because they're very well-run airlines. And at age 18, if she can get her foot in the door, she would have a long and successful career ahead of her.
Thank you very much for that, Field. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your time.
All right, Karen, come on up.
Hi, Mr. McConnell. It is such an honor to speak with you. I just wanted to state something about you and your character, which I absolutely love. From 9/11 to the Malaysian Airlines to the SEC, your bravery goes beyond what anyone I know would go. And I know what you're going to say, it's all God, and it is, but God is using you in such a big way. And I really think that He has given us faith in God by listening to you today. That, I'm sorry I'm crying, but you've increased our faith in God. And I just want to thank you.
Well, thank you for thanking me, but keep in mind that if anybody thinks that I've done anything worthy of thanks, that's not exactly accurate. But God is worthy of eternal thanks, and God will see us through anything. And when I say that God will see us through anything, it's just been a couple of years ago that I was arrested as a 70-year-old man, never having committed a crime, and I was put in jail in Ellsworth, Wisconsin. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. I was in jail in Ellsworth at the Pierce County jail for 5 months. Then I was illegally extradited. And when I say illegally, okay, who did that? Well, 2 governors, Governor Tony Evers of Wisconsin, who is a public educator, not a career politician, and he wouldn't know much about extradition. And Ron DeSantis, down in Governor DeSantis in Florida, now he should have known better than to sign my extradition papers, because he is not only an attorney, but he's also a judge. And people might scratch their head and say, "Oh yeah, how so?" Well, he's a Navy JAG, which is Judge Advocate General, and so he serves as both an attorney and a judge in the Navy, and he certainly should know better than to sign my extradition papers, because my extradition was done in a non-legal procedure. And am I whining like a little crybaby? No, I'm not. And the reason I'm not is God uses all of these things to demonstrate his power to uplift us and cause us to be able to get through anything. And the toughest thing I've ever had to get through, pardon my voice, but the toughest thing I've had to deal with in my life is the loss of my wife, Denise. And I think that if I can survive that, I can pretty much survive anything, because that really hurt me. And I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly what time it was. I was in Stuart, Florida at 10:21 p.m. Eastern Time on the evening of December 20th of December 30th of 2020, and my cell phone rang, the phone I'm talking to you all on right now. My phone rang, and it was a guy named Dr. Good Vibes and his wife, and I sort of could guess what they were going to tell me because of the time of the night. I didn't think they'd call me at that hour of the night just to see if I wanted to play checkers or something like that. But when I answered and said Field McConnell, Dr. Good Vibes said two words. He said, "She's gone." And he didn't have to say anything more. I knew what he meant. And this may surprise some of the people out there listening to this recording, but of the emotions that start swirling around my head, the most powerful emotion was relief. And the relief was that I didn't have to wonder if Denise was suffering anymore, because she was up in paradise with her Lord and Savior. And when I say her Lord and Savior, let me just extrapolate a little bit. When I first spent a night in her home in April of 2015, I was walking down the hallway on the upper level of her house, and she was walking alongside me in the hallway, and she said, "Field, would you do me a favor?" And I said, "I will if it's within my power. What's the favor?" And she said, "Would you lead me to Jesus Christ?" And I said, "Yes, we'll do that right away." I said, "You go in and turn the laptop on and look up Romans 3:23 and 6:23, and then I'll come in and talk to you about those two things." And then, of course, from 2015 until I was arrested in 2019, life sort of went on. And then when I got arrested, I went through the process of being in jail and being extradited and then being released and put on house arrest, first in Stuart, Florida, and then up in Plum City. And I was allowed to go to Plum City effective on the 21st of January. I think that's right. No, the 16th of January of 2021. And when I got to my house, I knew that Denise had died, and I knew that my house would be empty and dark. And I was I was really sore because, see, I was losing weight. I lost during my incarceration. I lost 90 pounds, and so my strength and my stamina were both not good, and my balance was not good either. I tipped over. I actually injured myself several times, tipping over and striking my head on objects. But I somehow got up my steep stairway, and I got into the master bedroom, which I knew was going to be empty and dark, and I turned some lights on, and the first thing I noticed, other than the fact that the house was really, well, it presented very well. It had been cleaned, and the master bedroom looked ready to go. And over on Denise's bedside table were two brand new Bibles that weren't there when I was last home. And so God showed me that he found Denise and he was ministering to her. And so that gave me a lot of increased or maintained faith that things were going to be okay and that God's plans were playing out in my life and in Denise's life. And this would be a good time for me to stop and say, I'd like to give credit to Jenny and Paula and Tracy for participating in this effort to allow me to get out and tell the truth.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Okay. Who used the word interject? We'll take you first.
Me. That was me. It was Paula. Speaking of your arrest, would you be willing to address your relationship with Kim Picasio today?
Yes. She was my antagonist in chief who went after me with great accuracy and effect. And she actually caused a lot of this. She caused the exposure and my legal travails. But to this day, as of the current day we're on, she is in my corner, and she is probably the greatest potential witness I have in favor of not only Field McConnell, but in also the truth, because she was across the courtroom from me, and she knows what she did, and I know what she did, and she has forgiven me for what she thought I did, and I've forgiven her for what I know she did. And so she and I, meaning Kim Picasio and Field McConnell, we're very close right now, and to some degree, we depend on each other. Is that good enough, Paula?
That's good. Thanks. I just wanted people to know that there has been huge amends and a lot of disclosure and a lot of truth that's come out that I haven't even fully disclosed myself yet to everybody. And I just want people to know that the amends have been made and everybody is okay. And so I'm going to just hand it back over to everybody else.
All right, Nancy.
Okay, there was another lady that wanted to say something.
It's me, Field. I'm Nancy. I'm a nurse, and I am so happy that you're healing. I am so happy that you told people in this channel that you got wonderful care, because there's still a lot of great medical people. I worked for years up in Boston at a big city hospital, and I am really happy that you're doing well, and just so grateful to know you. I am an Army wife. My husband was in the military. He's retired now. So thank you for your service, and I'm so grateful I get to speak to you today.
Well, let me put a feather in your cap. If your husband was in the Army and you're a nurse, that's a parallel between the doctor at the Mayo Clinic in Menominee, Wisconsin. My primary physician is in the Army National Guard. He's a weekend warrior, and he's taking very good care of me. And he pretty much working alone diagnostically. He figured out what was wrong with me. And what was wrong with me from October until mid-May was I was dehydrated and malnourished. And I had no appetite. And, you know, to people that have never been malnourished, it would be hard for normal people to believe how difficult it is to force yourself to eat when you have no appetite and you're not hungry. And so I found myself actually fibbing or fabricating when people would say, "How are you doing? You look sort of like you lost weight." And I said, "Yeah, I lost 90 pounds, but I'm doing pretty well." And that was a big fat lie. And I knew it. And I was a little hard on myself because I'm very much loyal to keeping my word and keeping my oath. And that comes from having gone to the Naval Academy, where if you get caught being dishonest, they can kick you out. And they could kick you out a week before graduation, or, you know, any time between when you sign up and raise your hand. And so I've been very cautious of trying to be as honest as possible, but I found myself being a little dishonest when people were pestering me about my health. I mean, one look at me, and I'd lost 90 pounds. I looked like a POW, which, let me stop right there. My father was a POW of the Japanese for 16 months in World War II, and I was a POW, prisoner of Wisconsin, for 16 months in 2021, going into, no, that's it, 2020 and 2021. And so I'm going to write a book here when my computer gets hooked up by Tracy, and it's going to be called War Bride POW. And War Bride will be in reference to Denise because, pardon my weak voice, but for a lot of you ladies out there, can you imagine how difficult it would be to be married to somebody like me? And yet, Denise was fearless, and she was loyal, and she stayed right by me right up until she died. And I would love to have gone home to say goodbye to her. And I asked the judge in Florida to allow me to make a trip up to Wisconsin to say goodbye to my wife, who is terminal, and the judge wouldn't let me do it. Now, does that mean that I dislike the judge or hold him accountable? No. What good would that do? It wouldn't bring Denise back. But I do think that when somebody that is a POW, in this case I was a prisoner of Wisconsin, it's okay to cut him a little slack and let him go home if his wife or child is dying. And I think the dynamics were that the judge probably thought I was trying to pull a fast one on him. Well, I wasn't. So if he would have dealt with the facts instead of his supposition, you know, maybe I could have come home and said goodbye to Denise, but who knows? Maybe the airplane I was traveling on would crash, and that would really get some eyeballs rolling around. There's people on the internet that, in response to some of the YouTubes that have been published about me, there's people who say things like, "I absolutely don't believe that Denise died of natural causes. I think she was killed." Well, what a stupid thing to say, especially if you don't know what you're talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. I had a very good relationship with the doctor and nurse who cared for Denise for the last 7 weeks of her life. She died of natural causes. Speaking of that, Jenny, are you still here?
Yes, sir. I am still here.
Okay, well, if Paula or Tracy reminds me, I've got a marble monument being made that I'm going to put in the ground on this farm in Plum City, Wisconsin, because Denise loved this property so much. But yet it's not gonna be an upright cross or an obelisk or anything that'll be visible from the driveway. My driveway's a half mile long, so it wouldn't be visible from much of the driveway anyway. But I've got a marble monument that's being inscribed with Denise Irene Clark McConnell, her birthday, and her date of death. And it's going to have a songbird and a rose, and it'll be permanently installed in my yard, where I'm going to put a meditation garden in. And Denise, my wife Denise, really loved butterflies, and so I meant to do it this spring, but I was sick. But next spring, and this is something Jenny, Tracy, and Paula can help me with, I will do some research and find out the best time or the best temperature to start a butterfly garden. And then I've been visited by, in fact, two of them just flew by my window right when I said I've been visited recently by a lot of butterflies. And I don't know how anybody out there in radio land would react to that, but I know how I react to it. When I see butterflies flying by my window so close that they must be aware that I can see them, I think it's a physical manifestation that Denise's spirit is keeping an eye on me. And so I resolved about, I don't know when it was probably October or November most recently. I decided that as marvelous as I think women are, my heart belongs to Denise. And that's why I'm putting the monument in my yard. It's to remind me every day to be respectful and to honor the memory of Denise Irene Clark, who became a McConnell. And so, anyway, sorry I digress, but I do that a lot. Over to you, young lady.
Well, does anybody else have a question? What a great day today, huh? We are blessed to have Phil come into the room with Paula. And let me tell you, he sounds so good. I'm so happy. Anybody else have a question?
Sure. No, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say, Mr. McConnell, you sound fantastic. I'm so blessed that you're here and talking to us. Yeah, I mean, I'm almost in tears. Like, I mean, I can feel you. Like, you are so spiritual, and I don't know. I just can feel it. You have a heart of gold, and you're loving and caring.
Sure.
Well, thank you. I would just, before you put me up on a statue, just say I haven't always been spiritual, and I haven't always been necessarily a good guy, but you know, God got a hold of me, and I can tell you exactly when. It was on February 1st or 2nd of, now I'm going to stumble on the year, 1995, I think. I was in a hotel being trained on a new airplane by Northwest, and literally there was a knock on my door, and I'm not talking about my hotel door. I'm talking about the door to my heart. And so I had reason to go sit on the bed, and I put my hand, I'd been staying there in that bed in that room for 5 weeks. And so I backed up to the bed, and I put my right hand down, and it landed on the mattress. And then my left hand landed on something on the night table, or bedside table, whatever you call that thing. And it was a Gideon's Bible. And so, you know, this is very disrespectful, so don't overreact yet. But I said to myself, there's nobody else in the room except God. And I said, oh, maybe a little light reading would be good. And of course, the Bible is not light reading. It reveals light, but it's pretty heavy duty reading. And I caused the book to open. I didn't open it with knowledge of where it might go. But when I looked down at the page it opened up to, it was Proverbs 3, and my vision was directed to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And that was the moment in time where I realized that God was reaching out to me, and God was calling me, and I mean that most sincerely. And so I read that about 10 times, then I closed the book, meaning the Bible, and I said, God, you've got me now, and you've got me forever. Thank you for saving me. And then, that's the moment, February of 1995, that I turned from Field McConnell, the pilot, to Field McConnell, the servant. And, my life's been up and down since then, but God always gets me on the high ground if I don't dwell in the valley. And so I don't. And that's what I would like to do to Jenny's listeners, or Paula's, or Tracy's. If I can inject a little Christian faith into the people that hear my messages, I think I will hear God say, welcome home, my loyal son, because I'm not doing any of this for me. I'm doing all of this for the people who might listen to me. Over to you.
How are you doing, Field? Are you feeling okay to go for a few more questions?
Yeah.
We got a couple more.
Yeah, I can do some more questions. I don't know what time it is, but maybe somebody could tell me.
It's 3:28 Central Time. You're on my time.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, let's have some more questions.
All righty. I think Trish had one for you. Trish, would you like to ask him?
Yes. I apologize if there's a lot of noise in the background. My husband's looking for trucks, so I'm standing outside in the shade. But, Field, I am Trish. I am a friend of Tracy's who's gone through a lot. And if it wasn't for Tracy, I wouldn't be on these chats. I'm the one that has been asking her to ask you about my uncle, who is Zygmunt Brzezinski. And your testimony, an example with your sister, has made me feel much better being related to them, because I know he wasn't a good man. I'm related to Senator Maziarz. You might remember him from years ago. But my question to you is, I've read a lot that my uncle was involved in some way with 9/11. Is this true?
What's his
Okay,
name?
I'm having difficulty, maybe because you're outside or there's background noise, but could somebody that understands what Trish has just asked me, could somebody else repeat it?
Yes, Field, she has an uncle named Zygmunt Brzezinski. I think it's pronounced Zygmunt Brzezinski. And she was, involved. It was wanting to know if he was involved in 9/11. But her story is that, they don't come from a bad family, just that this person was bad. And she kind of knew about a little bit of him, even though it's her uncle. Zygmunt Brzezinski.
Zygmunt.
Yeah, I know who he is. It's pronounced Zygmunt. That's pretty close. Anyway, it's a Russian name, Brzezinski, and he's a bad person. But that should not make it, Trish or whoever the lady is, the relative, shouldn't feel bad about being related to Zygmunt Brzezinski because he's bad any more than I should be embarrassed or ashamed of being the brother of Christine Marcy. She's bad, and you know who's worse? Well, I'd say what I know about Zygmunt Brzezinski and my own sister, I'd say my sister is more to blame because she grew up in a good family with good role models for parents. And my mother and my father were both members of the U.S. military, and they served during World War II. And I, served for 26 years on either side of Vietnam. And I didn't go to Vietnam, but I put myself in a position where I could be sent to Vietnam anytime they wanted me. And I just don't understand how my sister, coming from the same background as me, we're only two kids in the family. I don't know how she could have been so disrespectful to my mother and my father to partner with George H.W. Bush, John McCain, Zygmunt Brzezinski, and other people like that who are trying to destroy the United States of America. Let me just put something in the ears of all your listeners. That is, for the people listening to Jenny's broadcast, has anybody ever wondered why George H.W. Bush, a president, and John McCain, a U.S. senator, why neither one of them were allowed to be buried at Arlington Cemetery? And the reason is because they're traitors. If they hadn't committed treason, they'd be buried at Arlington right now. And that's where my parents' remains were. And of course, my parents have ascended, but my parents earned their way into Arlington by being faithful patriots. And George H.W. Bush and John McCain precluded themselves from being allowed into Arlington because they're traitors. I hope that doesn't sound too inaccurate. Over to you, Trish or Jenny or whoever.
You're good,
I just want
Field.
to say, sorry, Tracy. I just want to say, Field, thank you. I had said, I'm in the car now, so I hope you can hear me. I just want to say,
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I just want to say thank you for being you and the example you are with your sister, because it has made me feel much better about being related to somebody like Zygmunt. And it was almost embarrassing to say that I was a Brzezinski because of him. But I know I'm nothing like him. So thank you for your example, because it makes me feel much better.
Well, you should feel good about yourself because that's what God would want. God doesn't want you to be sullen or tearful or ashamed. He wants you to walk out in the sunshine and look skyward and thank Him. And so, and He wants you to have a good day, a good night, and go on with the rest of your life with your head held up high.
Thank you, Field. And I do. I really, truly appreciate you and Tracy and Paula.
Well, you're going to get a lot of Tracy and Paula and myself because pretty soon we're going to have a ALGN radio show start up. And I'm not sure. Well, actually, I am sure now. I think during this radio interview today, we identified the 14th of July as perhaps the day that we, meaning Tracy, Paula, and myself, will have the inaugural ALGN radio show. And for those who may have forgotten what ALGN stands for, it's A Little Good News, which was a song by Anne Murray, the Canadian singer. And it's talking about how she wishes, in the narrative in the song, she's a housewife and a mother, and she's hoping that when she comes home from a busy day that when she turns the TV or the radio on, she hears a little good news. And I thought that that's the perfect name for a radio show because we're bombarded with bad news all day long, every day. And I just don't put up with it anymore. I don't go down the rabbit holes, and I seek out good news. And I'm a recipient of good news today because Jenny had me on her radio show. Thank you, Jenny. And
You're
it looks
welcome.
like Paula and Tracy and I will be back on another show with Jenny, probably in July. And it's not like I've arranged these things. I couldn't. I don't have the wherewithal to arrange this type of stuff. But God arranges it, and all He wants each of us to do is whatever He has designed us to be capable of doing. And we're all individuals, and we all have different gifts and different challenges. But God would like us all to work for His benefit and for His people in His world. And I, for one, am more than happy to do that. And I thank Paula and Tracy and now Jenny for making my job so much easier. So thank you, ladies.
You're welcome.
Absolutely, anytime.
May I
All
ask a
right.
question?
Okay, Mama Shar, go ahead.
Hi, Phil. My name is Mama Shar or Charlene. We're all anticipating this 4th of July. It's one of my absolute favorite holidays to celebrate in the summertime with family and friends. Do you think we have a little good news coming our way this 4th of July?
Well, at the risk of maybe misspeaking or sounding too optimistic, I got a phone call from somebody I've been speaking to for 13 years, and it was 3 days ago. And if I had a PC that I could fire up, I would read the man's message. It was a verbal message, and he and I were the only two in the phone conversation. But he was assuring me that this 4th of July would be mind-blowing and biblical. And what I can do is I think I can find his message. And if it's in writing, which I think it was, then I could give that to Paula or Tracy, or they could give it to Jenny, and we could get it published. But you're asking me the question, not the guy from 13 years of history with me. He said that this will be the greatest 4th of July that America has ever seen, and then it'll be biblical. And so, there's been a lot of talk about financial remedies and restitution, and I think that's part of what's coming. I'm hoping so, because so many people have suffered. And how do I define people? How about the whole world population? Globally, not just America, not just Canada, not just the United Kingdom or Europe. Everyone in the world has been victimized. And every time I hear about something black and white or slavery related, my eyeballs roll around in my head, because in America we're taught that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Well, people can think that if they want to, but I don't think so. I think Abraham Lincoln participated in allowing everyone to become slaves financially due to unlawful taxation. And here it is, 150 years after that, that it may be remedied. Now, they can give us financial restitution. That's easily done with a pretty powerful computer. But how do you give back the time to families who have suffered for no reason other than the Khazarian mafia wanted us to suffer, and the globalists wanted us to suffer, and the deep state people wanted us to suffer. And in the case of my family, my own sister wanted me to suffer. And God gave me a power of resilience. God gave me a personality where if somebody knocks me down, I get up and dust myself off and stand there, and they can knock me down again, but they can't keep me down because I'm sort of like the ever-ready bunny. And there's a really good poem that I'd recommend anyone who's not familiar with it. You know, if you need to go to the bathroom or get a glass of ice water, do so. But when you come back to your computer, look up a poem called The Man in the Arena. And it's a poem that's written by one of the Rockefellers, and I think Teddy Rockefeller. Is that right? No, Teddy Roosevelt. I think he wrote it, but when I said that when somebody knocks me down, and by the way, I'm easy to knock down, as Paula could tell you, or Tracy, I lost 90 pounds during my illness, and I'm nowhere near as big or as strong, and I'm not a physical stud, but I used to be pretty physically strong. But I'm, having lost 90 pounds in a short period of time, I've become rather weak and feeble, which brings me to an Elvis Presley song called Stand By Me, where he has a line in that song where he says, when I'm growing weak and feeble, stand by me. And the name of the song by Elvis Presley is Stand By Me. And see, I've lived that too, because for the last 6 or 9 months, I have become increasingly more weak and increasingly more feeble. And yet God didn't give up on me. He restored my health, and I'm making an amazing recovery. And the amazing recovery was mentioned to me by my physician, who has been monitoring my health. And so I thank my physician. I thank Paula and Tracy for standing by me. I thank Kim Picasio, the attorney, for forgiving me. And mainly, I thank God for seeing me through all this. And, if I guess a good cliche here is if God will bring you to it, God will get you through it. And that's been my experience. I mean, the stuff that I've been involved with, I could not have caused it to happen. And if I attempted to cause it to happen, I couldn't guarantee the success. But it appears that for the time being that I am having the desired effect. And so I thank God each and every day and each and every night for his using me in this way. And I also thank God for giving me 5.5 years with Denise. And those were very much, by a wide margin, the best 5.5 years of my life this far. But then, of course, Van Morrison would tell us something akin to, you ain't seen nothing yet, or the best is yet to come. So anyway, I'll turn it back over to the host, Jenny. Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, Nancy has one more question that she forgot to ask you. Nancy, would you
Okay.
like to go ahead and finish that?
Sure. I live on Cape Cod, and I live right near the base. So I was wondering if you ever flew on the base or any other airport around here on Cape Cod.
Well, are you talking about Otis Air National Guard Base?
Yep, that's where my husband was stationed.
Well, I actually flew there. I was on an exercise it would have been about 1985 or 86. And I was there with two F-4s. I was flying one, and I had a good guy in the back seat. And then the other one, there was a pilot who was a lot different than me. He played by the rules, and I played around the rules. I don't think the U.S. taxpayers really cared what rules I used, as long as I was willing to get the job done and get the airplane safely home. And I find it no coincidence that out of the 5,200 F-4 Phantoms that were built, the one that's most closely associated with my name, and once again, you can find it, Field McConnell's jet plus image, and it's got Denise's birth year and birthday on the tail. And is that a coincidence? No, it's not. It's a God wink. You know, when God is going to prepare any of us to serve him, he also prepares things to motivate us, knowing that we'll recognize the hand of God in these apparent coincidences. But to answer your question, Nancy, yes, I've not only have I flown F-4s in and out of Otis, and I could, if we were at a conference right now, we'd take a break and go into a smaller room, and I could tell some interesting stories that involve me, F-4s, and Otis. But in the meantime, I'll just let you know that in 1959 through 1963, my father was stationed at Westover Air Force Base in Massachusetts. And in the summertime, we'd go to Cape Cod, and we'd, enjoy the beach. And also, I alluded to the fact that there's a guy that I've been talking to for 13 years, and I'm not going to identify him other than by saying that the individual that has been communicating with me for 13 years lives on Cape Cod, and I've been out to visit him. So anyway, I find it as not a coincidence that all of these connections are put in place, because God's doing it, not me and not Nancy.
Field, I used to see him roaming around too back in the day on the golf course and the family. So I've been around, being out in the public. I've seen them.
Okay,
Ooh. Did you see?
I saw few John Kennedy Jr. and his wife Carolyn. They were in the grocery store. Back when I was in 96, I think it was 96 and 97, yeah. And I've been around the Kennedys at the golf course because my kids used to caddy in Hyannisport. So that's how I saw a lot of the Kennedys.
Well, I think you're going to see a Kennedy pretty soon.
Hey!
Yay! Yep.
And if we see that Kennedy come back, that's going to be an act of God, because, it's not like I'm a know-it-all. I don't know anything. I really don't. But I know this, that when they wanted to destroy JFK Jr. and his wife's sister, they put an explosive with a barometric trigger on the empennage, which means the tail of his private airplane. And what that means is that because it's a barometric trigger, when the aircraft got up to a preset or pre-selected altitude, it would arm the explosives, and then on its descent into Martha's Vineyard, when it descended through that same altitude, it would blow the tail of the airplane off. And most of your listeners believe that JFK Jr. was killed in a plane crash en route to Martha's Vineyard, and that's not true. JFK Jr., his wife, and his sister-in-law were not on the aircraft. They were supposed to be, but when they found out that it had a explosive on the empennage, they got a U.S. Navy SEAL that knew how to fly single-engine Cessnas, and he jumped in the pilot seat and took off and talked on the radio as if he was JFK Jr., and then he climbed out of the barometric trigger altitude, and he cruised over to Martha's Vineyard, and then knowing where the explosive was supposed to detonate the tail, as he was descending and getting close to that trigger point, he pulled the power back so he didn't have a bunch of prop blast or prop wash. And the reason he would do that, by the way, is if you've got power on the airplane and you try to open the door, the prop wash or the thrust is going to try to keep the door closed. So the SEAL descending towards the point where the tail was going to blow off, he opened the door and he bailed out. Now, did he have a parachute? I don't think so, but I don't know. In fact, I'm glad I said that, because one thing that people that listen to me will recognize very soon is that if I don't know something, I will readily admit I don't know. But the reason I say, did the SEAL have a parachute? My guess is no, he didn't, because he was going to be so close to the water anyway. If he crossed his legs, and whether you're a male or a female, you can understand why. But as long as he would go into the water feet first with his legs crossed, he wouldn't have a painful event. And I'm sort of laughing because I've had that painful event occasionally. But anyway, no, we're all related in this. Every single person listening to this recording or listening to this live show has a relationship to somebody else that's speaking, whether it's Nancy or Trish or Jenny or Mama Shar or whoever she said she was. But I hope that helps you, because I've been told by this guy from Cape Cod that we're going to have a world-class 4th of July, and it'll be biblical. Well, I hope so, and I think that would be great if there was a biblical event, because we certainly, all of us need a little good news, and all of us need Jesus Christ to come back and take us home. Over to you.
Oh my gosh, yes, we do. I love it, because this is a God moment, a spiritual moment, and we don't want to forget the story, because this is a miracle story for us. We're so thankful for you, Phil. Are you okay? How is Paula doing too? I want to make sure you guys are okay.
Yeah, no, I'm perfectly fine. My health is coming back really quickly, and I lost track of time. That's why I asked somebody at about 3:20 or 3:28. I said, "Does anybody know what time it was?" And whoever answered, it could have been Tracy, said it's 3:28 Central. Well, I can keep track of a lot of stuff in my head, and that's what makes me dangerous to people in the federal government like George H.W. Bush, John McCain, my own sister. But when I used to have the Naval Danger radio show, if somebody said, "Phil, you shouldn't be talking like that," somebody could try to kill you. And I just let that roll right off my back. I said, well, if they want to try to kill me, I can make it happen, because they know which 3 days a week I do my broadcast, and they know where I broadcast from. And what they don't know is there's a great big window where they can come and observe me, and my back is to the window, so I won't see them, and they can shoot me in the back. I said, that's the type of cowards that I work against. And then, of course, as we've already mentioned in this show, I was a prisoner of Wisconsin. I was extradited illegally by 2 different governors, Wisconsin and Florida. And yet, God keeps putting me back on the high ground. And as long as I don't do anything to offend God, I think I'm, pretty secure position, because I'm 73. I'll be 74 in October, and I've come this far. And somewhere in the Bible, and I thought it was in Philippians, but it may not be. But it says, and I'll look it up and I'll send a message to Tracy, and she can publish it. But I'll find the quote where it says, it's talking about Jesus and his relationship to any of us believers. And it says, knowing this, that he who started a good work in you will continue it until the day of Christ Jesus. And what that means is either the day that Christ Jesus comes back to earth, to get us, or it could be the time where each of us as individuals acknowledge Christ Jesus as our Lord and Savior. And if there's anybody listening to this interview right now, if you haven't given your heart to Jesus, maybe 5 minutes after the radio show concludes would be a good time to a quiet location in your house and pray to him that he would lead you home. So I'll say that's probably about enough for me today, Jenny and Tracy and Paula. But do any of you three ladies have anything for me?
I'm good.
I just want to say thank you again, Field. I'm looking so forward to you guys coming on the show. And like I said, you always have a spot on my show because the show is about people's journeys and telling their stories. So you have a lot of things to say, and it's like I tell everybody, you are a true hero, and you will probably be one of the biggest whistleblowers that come out, if not the biggest. And I just I'm grateful to be able to have this conversation with you. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. And God positioned me to be a whistleblower. It's not something like I woke up one morning and I thought, well, I'm not busy today, I think I'll become a whistleblower. No, I was just put in certain matrices where I could either keep quiet or I could speak about what I know about. And so I've been speaking about what I know about, but rather than have anybody think I'm a know-it-all, no, I'm not. There's a lot of things I don't know, but I tend to speak about the things I do know. And then if somebody asks me something of which I'm not familiar, I just am honor bound to myself to tell them, I'm sorry, I don't know the subject matter. So I, take another question. But I'm going to say goodbye to Paula, goodbye to Tracy, and goodbye to Jenny. And I'll look forward to the 14th of July if that's when we reassemble.
Absolutely, I can't wait.
I can't wait either. Well, I can't wait. Let's just say that, because I get to see and meet Field. I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to Tracy and her husband coming to my home. I've been here alone since January the 16th of 2021. And there's times where I enjoy this solitude, but there's times where this big house is sort of a sad place, because at one point it had, little kids running around. And then at one point it had Denise here for 5.5 years. And now it's quiet. And so Tracy and her husband, and I know his name, but I'm not saying it, but they're going to be the first house guests that I've had since I've gotten back from being falsely extradited and imprisoned in Florida. So I welcome Tracy and her husband here to come and relax and enjoy themselves. I can't wait.
But wait, we had Katie. Katie came and stayed with you.
Oh yeah, you're right. And so did what's the
Kathy.
other lady's
Kathy.
name?
Kathy
The
did.
one from the Colorado lady.
Yeah, Kathy came, and there was another guest, but we'll leave that person unnamed for now.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Well, okay. Let me rephrase this. And I invited Tracy and her husband. The other people, I did not invite them. In fact, Paula, I think you invited at least one of them, didn't you?
Yeah, but I asked your permission. She offered. Katie offered to come
Yep.
and nurse you back to health, and you received her well. So, but she offered, and I presented it
Oh,
to
yeah.
you.
Yeah, well, and I was happy to accommodate her. And I'm sorry that I forgot those three people, two of which I just named. But the difference is that I, with great discretion, have invited Tracy and her husband to come here. And I think we're going to have a really nice visit. And
We're
it's
going to
not
have a
going to last
beautiful.
forever. Pardon me?
Oh, I said we're going to have a beautiful visit, and you know what? We'll be up there more and more and more. That's what that's going to do. And then I hear that Paula might go in September, so I definitely want to get up there then too.
Well, if you and Paul are here in September, then by then I should have the marble monument laid as a monument to Denise, and then I'll probably run this by some of you ladies, but I intend to plant a white rose and a red rose on either side of the monument. And the white rose, to my way of thinking, would be to honor the fact that Denise had never been married before she married me. And the red rose would, in my way of thinking, it would remind me of the passion that I had for Denise and vice versa, because we truly had a wonderful marriage. And if there was a fault with our marriage, it was that it didn't last long enough, because when she was 55, God called her home.
Yeah. At 9:11 p.m. too, I'll add.
Well, yeah. And what you're talking about, that was the moment of her death. Yeah. That was 9/11 Central. She died in Osceola, Wisconsin. And I got the call about 10:21 Florida time. And the first two words out of Dr. Goodvibes' mouth was, "She's gone." And he didn't have to tell me that, because I knew instinctively why my phone would ring. So I was not happy that she was gone, but I was elated that she was no longer suffering or living in fear, because her quality of life was terrible in the last 7 weeks.
Yeah, but it's a God nod with the 9/11, because they say that's Jesus's birthday. But also, think about this for a minute. Trump is 45. That's a 9, and he's possibly going to be 47, which is 11. That's another 9/11. So these are all God nods.
Well, I could walk out right now to a 1994 Lincoln that has a license plate, a legit license plate from Wisconsin, that says 9/11 TCL. And, you know, my fictitious character that I wrote about was Agent Chips. And so 9/11 TCL, every time I see that license plate, I say to myself, the Chips Lincoln. And, you know, I could take a picture of that if anybody asked me, and I'd share it. But also, I've got another license plate that many of your listeners, and I'm talking now to, who is the lady running this show? Oh, Jenny. Yeah, many of your listeners probably know this, but I've got a license plate that says Q minus. and I've had it since 1988. So what does Q minus stand for? Well, I'd focus on the Q and leave all the rest of it to tomorrow or the next time we chat. But, I've been doing this type of stuff for quite a while, and I'm not dead yet. And I'm thankful. So I thank God right now that I'm not dead. And if I wasn't so tired, I'd probably say a prayer. But I think it might be time to wrap this up, Jenny. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. It's all about you, Phil. So if you want to go, we definitely we can return on another date that you feel good to speak again.
And I think that's the 14th of July. We're gonna all regather.
I've got it booked.
Yes. That sounds good. In fact, Jenny, you could start soliciting questions because people, when they're up in the middle of the night, they think about something, and sometimes they're thoughtful enough to write themselves a note so they'll see it in the morning. But I don't have an agenda. There's nothing I want to talk about. I would just like to have the opportunity to answer questions for those people who may have a question for me.
Absolutely, and we will do that. I've already put out a flyer advertising it, so yeah, I think you're gonna get a lot of people that love you, and I think you're gonna see a lot of the love, and know how much we all appreciate you and love you.
Okay, but just keep in mind that I'm actually a servant of God. I'm just doing what He wants me to do, and I hope and pray that I'm doing a moderately good job of doing what it is He prepared me to do. Because if you think about it, does anybody want to be a whistleblower and blow the whistle on his own sister? No to both of those things. I didn't want to be a whistleblower. I just became one. And I would not cause any problems if she hadn't first done a lot of problem creation for children, as in child trafficking and treason. And, I can't forgive either one of those things. And that brings me back to Denise, my wife. She and I started that children's crusade, and we had our initial and only meeting up in Llangollen, North Wales. And I just have lost interest in going back to North Wales because it would not be the same without Denise with me. So before I get too teary-eyed, I think I'll sign off and I'll say thank you, Jenny, thank you, Paula, thank you, Tracy, and thank you all for bearing with me for an hour and a half.
It's been 2 hours, and thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you.
Okay, Phil, I'll text you later. God bless.
Okay, God bless
Love
you
you,
too. Bye-bye.
Phil.
Yeah.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Aw, how was that today?
What
was
a
Hold
sweet.
on. That's great. Let me go ahead and stop the recording real quick.
Okay.
Everybody loves everybody in the good old USA. We sure could use a little good news.